I stood on the sidewalk staring at my clothes scattered across the perfectly manicured lawn. My wedding photo lay face down in a puddle from last night's rain. 3 years of marriage packed into garbage bags and thrown out like trash. You need to leave now, Naomi. Preston stood in the doorway of our house, my house too legally, with his arm around a woman I'd never seen before. She wore designer everything from her handbag to her shoes. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair was styled like she just stepped out of a salon. I looked nothing like her. I wore jeans and a simple blouse. My hair was pulled back in a ponytail. I'd just come from volunteering at the community center like I did every Tuesday. Preston, what is this? What's happening? My voice shook, but I refused to cry. Not yet. Not in front of the neighbors who were definitely watching from behind their curtains. This is me being honest for the first time in months. He stepped onto the porch and the woman stayed close to him. You're too local, Naomi. Too simple. Too basic. When I married you, I thought I could shape you into someone who fit my life. But you're still the same girl from the South Side who thinks shopping at discount stores is something to be proud of. The woman next to him smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I'm moving up in the company, Preston continued. I'm about to make partner at the firm. I need someone who understands that world. Someone with class, breeding, connections. Melissa here, he pulled the woman closer. She's from the right kind of family. She knows how to dress, how to talk, how to act at company events. She doesn't embarrass me by talking about coupons or asking if we really need to spend money on nice dinners. Each word felt like a slap. I'd love this man. I'd given up everything for him. You can't just kick me out, I said, trying to sound stronger than I felt. This is my home too. We're married. My attorney will be in touch about the divorce. Preston pulled papers from his pocket and dropped them on the porch. I'm claiming abandonment. You'll get nothing. And honestly, Naomi, what did you bring to this marriage anyway? No money, no connections, no education beyond that community college degree. You worked at a grocery store when we met, for God's sake. I put myself through school, I said quietly. I worked hard. And you're still working at that sad little nonprofit making poverty wages. Preston shook his head. I need a woman who doesn't have to work. Someone who can focus on supporting my career, hosting the right parties, joining the right clubs. You could never be that person. Melissa spoke for the first time, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It's really for the best, sweetie. You'll be much happier with someone more at your level. Preston needs someone who can match his ambition and status. The woman was wearing my robe. I could see the monogrammed N on the pocket. She'd been in my house, in my closet, wearing my things. How long? I asked. Does it matter? Preston shrugged. Look, I'm being nice by giving you your stuff. I could have just changed the locks. Take your garbage bags and go. I have people coming over tonight, and I don't want them asking questions about why my ex-wife is camping on the lawn. We're not divorced yet, I said. A technicality. Now leave, Naomi. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. I looked at the house we'd bought together 2 years ago. The house I'd cleaned every week, where I'd cooked meals and hosted his colleagues and tried so hard to be what he wanted. The house where I'd dreamed of raising children someday. You'll regret this, I said softly. Preston laughed. Actually laughed. Regret leaving someone who wears shoes from Payless? I don't think so. Goodbye, Naomi. Try not to end up back in whatever neighborhood you crawled out of. He went inside with Melissa. The door closed. I heard the lock click. I stood there for a long moment looking at my life in garbage bags. My neighbors had given up pretending not to watch. Mrs. Chin from next door had her phone out, probably recording everything. I started picking up my things. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the bags. I loaded them into my 10-year-old car, the one Preston always complained about. It took 3 trips. By the time I finished, it was getting dark. I sat in the driver's seat and finally let myself cry. Not because I loved Preston. I was starting to realize I'd loved an illusion, a man who'd never really existed. I cried because I'd been so stupid. I'd married him against everyone's advice. I'd cut ties with my family to prove I could make it on my own. I'd worked hard to support us while he finished law school, believing we were partners. And he'd thrown me away like garbage the minute I wasn't useful anymore. I drove to the cheapest motel I could find and paid for a week in cash. The room smelled like old cigarettes and cleaning products that didn't quite cover older smells. The bedspread had stains I didn't want to examine too closely. The TV got 3 channels. This was my life now. I sat on the bed and pulled out my phone. I had $17 in my checking account. My credit cards were maxed out from covering household expenses while Preston saved for our future. My job at the nonprofit paid just enough to cover basics, and that assumed I had a husband sharing expenses. I had one number I could call. One person who would help me without hesitation. I'd sworn I wouldn't. I'd promised myself I'd make it on my own, prove I didn't need my family's money or influence. That I could build a real life based on love and hard work. But pride wasn't going to pay for food or a lawyer. My finger hovered over the contact labeled Dad for a long time before I finally pressed call. He answered on the first ring. Naomi? And I broke down completely. Baby girl, where are you? My father's voice was tight with concern. I could hear movement in the background like he was already grabbing his keys. I'm at a motel, I said through tears. The Sundown Inn on Route 40. Did he hurt you? Are you injured? The fear in his voice made me cry harder. No, not physically. Dad, he threw me out. He threw all my things on the lawn and told me I wasn't good enough for him anymore. He has another woman. He called me too local, too simple, too basic. He said I embarrass him. The silence on the other end of the phone was worse than yelling would have been. I'm sorry, I continued. I know you told me he wasn't right for me. I know you warned me and I didn't listen. I was so sure I knew better. I wanted to prove I could build a life without the family money, without the connections, without any of it. I just wanted to be normal, and now I have nothing and nowhere to go and... Stop. His voice was gentle but firm. You have nothing to apologize for. Love makes us all believe in impossible things. I fell in love with your mother against every bit of logic, and she was the best thing that ever happened to me. You tried to build something real with someone you trusted. That's not foolish. That's brave. I don't feel brave. I feel stupid. What you're feeling is hurt and betrayed. That's different. And what that man did, throwing you out like you're disposable, that's not about your worth. That's about his complete lack of character. I heard a car door close. I'm leaving now. I'll be there in 4 hours. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're my daughter. You called for help. Of course I'm coming. He paused. And Naomi? I'm bringing my attorney. I can't afford. Did I ask you to pay? Eleanor Thornton is the best divorce attorney in the state. She'll handle everything. Now tell me exactly what happened. Don't leave anything out. So I told him. About coming home to find my belongings on the lawn. About Melissa in my robe. About Preston's cruel words and the divorce papers citing abandonment. About realizing I had almost no money because I'd been paying all our bills while Preston claimed he was investing in our future. Has he shown you these investments? My father asked. No. He said I wouldn't understand the financial details. Red flag number 1. What about bank statements? Everything is paperless and in his name. He said it was easier that way since I was bad with money management. Red flag number 2. Did you sign anything recently? Any papers, forms, business documents? I thought back. A few months ago he said I needed to sign something for his company. Tax paperwork or insurance. I don't really remember. He was in a hurry. Did you read it? Shame washed over me. No. Don't feel bad about that. You trusted your husband. That's normal. But I need you to think very carefully. Did you sign anything else? Loans, credit applications, anything at all? He handled all that stuff. He said I should focus on my work and let him manage our finances. My father's sigh was heavy. Naomi, I need to tell you something. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before, but you'd asked me to stay out of your life and I was trying to respect that. But I need you to know the truth now. My stomach dropped. What truth? I never stopped protecting you. Even when you asked me not to interfere, even when you said you needed to do this on your own. I had people keeping an eye on things. Not to invade your privacy, but to make sure you were safe. You've been spying on me? I've been being a father. And what my team found concerns me deeply. Preston has been moving money. Large amounts into accounts you don't have access to. He's also been using your name and identity on several business deals without your knowledge or consent. I felt cold all over. What kind of deals? Real estate investments that went bad. Business loans that defaulted. He's been signing your name to documents, and when those deals failed, the debt went to you. Legally, you're responsible for hundreds of thousands of dollars you never even knew about. That's impossible. I would have known. Creditors would have contacted me. They tried. But he changed your mailing address on official documents. Everything goes to a P.O. box he controls. Naomi, this isn't just a cruel husband leaving his wife. This is fraud. Identity theft. Financial abuse. This is criminal. I couldn't breathe. The motel room felt like it was closing in. I don't understand. Why would he do this? If he wanted a divorce, why not just ask for one? Because the minute you filed for divorce, you'd have access to financial records. You'd see what he's been doing. He needed you gone before you could discover the truth. My father's voice hardened. And he needed to discredit you first. That's why the abandonment claim. If he can paint you as someone who walked out on the marriage, someone unreliable and unstable, it's easier to explain away your signature on documents you claim not to have signed. But I didn't walk out. He kicked me out. Do you have proof of that? Witnesses. I thought about my neighbors watching. Maybe. Mrs. Chin was filming on her phone. Good. That's very good. Eleanor will want to talk to her. Anyone else see what happened? Half the neighborhood was watching. He did it in broad daylight. He wanted to humiliate me. His arrogance just became our biggest advantage. I could hear the steel in my father's voice now, the tone that made business rivals nervous. Listen to me carefully, Naomi. Don't contact Preston. Don't answer his calls or texts. Don't sign anything else. Don't make any statements to anyone about what happened. Can you do that? Yes. I'm going to call Eleanor now and brief her. We'll both be there in a few hours. Get some rest if you can. Eat something. Take care of yourself. Tomorrow we start fighting back. Dad. My voice cracked. I'm sorry I cut you off for 3 years. I'm sorry I was too proud to. You have nothing to apologize for. You're my daughter. You wanted to build your own life. That's what you're supposed to do. I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. Now get some rest. I'll see you soon. After he hung up, I sat in the quiet motel room. Outside, I could hear traffic and voices and the normal sounds of the world continuing on like my life hadn't just exploded. Preston thought he'd gotten rid of me. Thought he'd discarded the poor, simple girl who wasn't good enough for his fancy new life. He had no idea who my father was. No idea what he just started. I pulled up Preston's social media on my phone. He'd already changed his relationship status to in a relationship with Melissa. There were photos of them at an expensive restaurant, her showing off what looked like a very expensive bracelet. His latest post said, "Finally moving forward with someone who shares my vision for the future. Life is too short to settle." The comments were full of congratulations from his colleagues. No one asked about me. It was like our 3-year marriage had never happened. I took screenshots of everything. Then I did what my father said and ate the granola bar from my purse and tried to rest. But I couldn't sleep. Because despite everything, the pain, the humiliation, the fear, I felt something else stirring inside me. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, calculating kind. The kind that made plans. Preston wanted to erase me, discredit me, destroy me. He was about to find out that was a very bad idea. The knock on my motel room door came at exactly 6 in the morning. I'd been awake for hours, watching the sun come up through the thin curtains. "It's Dad," my father's voice called through the door. I opened it to find him standing there in a designer suit, looking exactly like what he was. A billionaire businessman who'd built an empire from nothing. Behind him stood a woman in her 50s wearing an elegant pantsuit and carrying a leather briefcase. My father pulled me into a hug. He smelled like the cologne he'd worn my whole life, and for a moment I was 7 years old again and everything was okay because Dad could fix anything. "I missed you so much," he said quietly. "I missed you too." When we pulled apart, he gestured to the woman. "This is Eleanor Thornton, best divorce attorney in 3 states. Eleanor, this is my daughter Naomi." Eleanor shook my hand with a grip that was all business. "We have a lot to discuss. But first, we're getting you out of this place. Malcolm has already arranged for a suite at the Grandview Hotel downtown." "I can't afford." "You're not paying," my father said firmly. "And we need somewhere secure to work. Somewhere Preston can't just show up. The Grandview has excellent security." An hour later, I was in a beautiful suite with a living room, bedroom, and a view of the city. My father had sent someone to get my things from the motel while Eleanor spread documents across the dining table. "Let's start with what we know," Eleanor said, opening her briefcase. "Your husband, Preston Wells, is a junior partner at Harrington and Associates law firm. He's been employed there for 18 months. Before that, he worked at 2 other firms, both of which he left under questionable circumstances." She pulled out a file. "This is his financial history. He's been living well beyond his means for years. The house you lived in? Mortgaged to the maximum. The car he drives? Leased. The designer clothes, the expensive dinners, the country club membership? All on credit. He's drowning in debt." "But he told me we were saving," I said. "That he was investing our money." "He was investing," my father said grimly, "in maintaining an image he couldn't afford. The question is why someone so desperate for money married a woman he believed had none. Eleanor pulled out another document. That's where it gets interesting. Preston did extensive research on you before you met. He knew exactly who your father was. He knew about the family wealth. My stomach turned. But I told him I was estranged from my family. That I didn't have access to any money. He thought he could change your mind. Get you to reconcile with your father and gain access to the fortune. When that didn't work, he switched strategies. Eleanor pushed a stack of papers toward me. These are documents with your signature. Loan applications, business filings, real estate purchases. Recognize any of them? I flipped through the papers. My signature was on every one, but I'd never seen these documents before. I didn't sign these. Actually, you did, Eleanor said. Remember that insurance paperwork he had you sign a few months ago? Hidden in that stack was a general power of attorney. You gave him legal authority to sign documents on your behalf. That's legal? Only if the power of attorney itself was signed knowingly. If he misrepresented what you were signing, that's fraud. Eleanor pulled out her laptop. We've been building a case for the last 6 hours. We have testimony from his previous employer about questionable financial practices. We have statements from 2 women he dated before you who describe similar patterns. Love bombing, isolation from family, financial control. We have bank records showing the money transfers. And we have the identity theft. My father leaned forward. Here's what we know he did. He used your identity to take out loans for business ventures that failed. When the ventures collapsed, the debt stayed with you. He then moved money from your joint accounts into hidden accounts only he can access. He's been planning this exit strategy for months, waiting until he'd extracted every possible penny before dumping you. But why bring Melissa into it? I asked. Why not just file for divorce? Because Melissa Ashford comes from money, Eleanor said. Real money. Old money. She's exactly what he thought you were, a ticket to the lifestyle he wants. He needed to secure her before leaving you. The cruelty of how he did it was designed to destabilize you emotionally, make you less likely to fight back legally. It almost worked, I admitted. But it didn't. My father's smile was cold. Because you called me. And now we're going to make sure Preston Wells regrets every decision he's made in the last 3 years. Eleanor stood. Here's what's going to happen today. At 9 o'clock this morning, my team is filing for divorce on your behalf. We're not claiming abandonment, we're claiming fraud, financial abuse, and identity theft. We're also filing a police report for the identity theft charges. Will that really lead anywhere? I asked. With the evidence we have? Absolutely. The district attorney is very interested in financial crimes, especially ones this clear-cut. Eleanor pulled out another document. At the same time we file, we're also freezing all joint assets. Preston won't be able to access any shared accounts or credit cards. We're putting a hold on the house sale. Yes, he was planning to sell it without your knowledge, and we're submitting a formal complaint to the state bar about his conduct. Wait, he could lose his law license? If we can prove he knowingly engaged in fraud and identity theft, yes. Lawyers are held to high ethical standards. What he did was criminal, and the Bar Association takes that very seriously. My father checked his watch. We have 2 hours before the filing. I suggest we pay a visit to Preston first. Let him know what's coming. I felt a flutter of fear. Is that a good idea? It's an excellent idea, Eleanor said. Because he's going to try to gaslight you. Tell you that you're crazy, that you're making things up, that no one will believe you. I want to see his face when he realizes we have evidence. It'll help me build the case. 30 minutes later, we pulled up to my house in a convoy of vehicles. My father's driver was in the lead car. Behind us was Eleanor's sedan. And behind that was a black SUV with 2 security guards my father had hired. The neighborhood was awake now. People were leaving for work, walking dogs, getting newspapers. They all stopped to stare at the 3 luxury vehicles parked in front of Preston's house. We walked up to the door and my father knocked. Pounded really? Preston opened the door in his bathrobe, clearly annoyed. Then he saw who was standing there and his face went white. Naomi? What's? He stopped when he saw my father. Recognition flickered across his face. Malcolm Chin Reynolds? You know who I am? My father asked mildly. Everyone in business knows who you are. Preston was trying to recover his composure, but I could see panic in his eyes. I don't understand. What are you doing here? I'm here because you threw my daughter's belongings on the lawn and told her she wasn't good enough for you. My father's voice was still calm. Almost friendly. You told her she was too local, too simple, too basic. That's an interesting assessment of the woman you married. Preston's eyes darted to me, then back to my father. Look, this is between Naomi and me. It's a private matter. It stopped being private when you committed fraud and identity theft, Eleanor said, stepping forward. I'm Eleanor Thornton, attorney at law. I'll be representing Naomi in the divorce proceedings and the criminal case. Criminal case? Preston's voice cracked. There's no criminal. I haven't done anything illegal. Really? Eleanor pulled out a folder. Because I have documentation showing you forged Naomi's signature on at least 14 different documents. You obtained a fraudulent power of attorney by misrepresenting the documents she was signing. You used her identity to secure loans and business deals without her knowledge or consent. You transferred marital assets to accounts in only your name. And you changed her mailing address on official documents to hide the evidence. That's fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. Those are felonies, Mr. Wells. Preston actually stumbled backward. You can't prove any of that. Actually, we can. My father pulled out his phone and held up a screenshot. Interesting how you've been photographing your credit cards and financial documents and storing them in cloud storage with very poor security. My IT team had no trouble accessing everything. That's illegal. What's illegal is using someone else's identity to commit fraud. What we did was gather evidence of a crime in progress. My father's smile disappeared. Let me be very clear about what's going to happen, Preston. In approximately 1 hour, my daughter will file for divorce. In that filing, we will detail every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every illegal transfer of funds. We will also file a police report and submit a formal complaint to the State Bar Association. You'll be sued for everything you have, Eleanor added. And you'll likely be facing criminal charges. The district attorney is very interested in white-collar crime, especially when it involves victimizing a spouse. Preston looked like he might throw up. Now wait. Let's talk about this. There's been a misunderstanding. I can explain. There's nothing to explain, I said, finding my voice. You married me thinking I'd give you access to my family's money. When I wouldn't, you decided to steal from me instead. You used me, lied to me, and when you were done, you threw me away like trash. Naomi, that's not. Yesterday you told me I was too simple for you. Too local. Not good enough for your fancy new life. I stepped closer. Turns out the simple local girl is the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the state. How's that for irony? Preston's face went from white to red. You lied to me. You let me think you were nobody. I never lied. I told you I was estranged from my family. I told you I wanted to make it on my own. You assumed that meant I had no one. That was your mistake. This is insane. Preston was sweating now. Melissa, get out here. The woman appeared from the bedroom wearing, again, my robe. She took one look at the people in the doorway and frowned. Preston, what's going on? Melissa Ashford, my father said pleasantly. Your father and I serve on the museum board together. Lovely man. I wonder what he'll think when he hears his daughter is involved with a man currently being investigated for fraud and identity theft. Melissa's eyes went wide. What? Preston, what is he talking about? Nothing. It's nothing. They're making things up because they're angry about the divorce. We have documentation, Eleanor said. And unless you want to be charged as an accessory, Ms. Ashford, I suggest you distance yourself from Mr. Wells immediately. Melissa looked at Preston, then at us, then at Preston again. I need to make a phone call, she said, and disappeared back into the bedroom. I'm going to destroy you, Preston hissed at me. You think you can just show up with your daddy's money and lawyers and... You already destroyed yourself, I said calmly. We're just making sure everyone knows about it. See you in court, Preston. We turned and walked back to the cars. Behind us, I heard Preston yelling, but I didn't look back. As we drove away, I saw neighbors recording on their phones. By tonight, everyone would know. The man who'd been so proud of his reputation, so concerned about his image, had just been exposed in front of everyone he tried to impress. How do you feel? My father asked. Good, I said. And I meant it. Really good. The next 2 weeks were a blur of meetings with attorneys, accountants, and investigators. Eleanor's office became my second home, a sleek space in a downtown high-rise where serious people in expensive suits spoke in clipped, professional tones about devastating things. We've identified 23 separate incidents of fraud, Eleanor said, pointing to a massive flowchart on her conference room wall. Each one could be a separate criminal charge. I sat at the long table with my father, trying to absorb everything. The flowchart showed Preston's activities over the past 3 years, a web of lies and theft so complex it made my head hurt. Talk me through it, I said. I need to understand everything he did. Eleanor picked up a laser pointer. It started small. 6 months after your wedding, he opened a credit card in your name. You never saw the card or the statements because he had them sent to that P.O. box. He maxed it out at $20,000, making minimum payments from your joint account. You didn't notice because he controlled the finances. What did he spend $20,000 on? Gifts for women he was seeing on the side. Dinners. Hotels. Jewelry. Eleanor clicked to the next slide. A year into your marriage, he escalated. He used the fraudulent power of attorney to take out a business loan in your name. $75,000 for an investment property that he claimed you were buying together. I never heard anything about investment property. Because the property didn't exist. He used the money to pay off personal debts and maintain his lifestyle. When the loan came due, he defaulted. The bank started collection proceedings against you. Why didn't I know about this? He changed your contact information on the loan documents. All correspondence went to him. When the bank couldn't reach you, they reported the default to the credit agencies. Your credit score dropped from 720 to 480. I felt sick. That's why my credit card applications kept getting denied last year. I thought it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was Preston destroying your financial credibility while protecting his own. Eleanor moved the laser pointer. Then 18 months ago, he really ramped things up. He filed articles of incorporation for a business called Apex Development Solutions. Listed you as the managing partner and primary investor. Used your signature, forged, on all the documents. What kind of business? Real estate flipping. He partnered with some shady developers to buy distressed properties, renovate them, and sell them for profit. Except the renovations were shoddy, the properties were in terrible condition, and several buyers sued. Those lawsuits named you personally because you were listed as the managing partner. My father had been quiet, but now he spoke. How much is she liable for? Potentially? $250,000 in judgments and another $100,000 in penalties and legal fees. If Preston hadn't been stopped, Naomi would have faced bankruptcy and possibly criminal charges for fraud herself, since her name was on everything. But I didn't do any of it, I said. We know that. And we can prove it. But without your father's resources, without investigators and attorneys, you would have been destroyed. Preston was counting on that. He was counting on you being too poor, too scared, and too isolated to fight back. Eleanor pulled up another slide. Here's where it gets interesting. 3 months ago, Preston started moving money. Large amounts from your joint accounts into offshore accounts. He also started selling assets. The furniture, some electronics, your jewelry. My jewelry? The pieces from my mother? All of it. Sold at pawn shops for a fraction of their value. He needed quick cash. I couldn't speak. Those pieces were all I had left of my mother. She died when I was 12, and I treasured her simple necklaces and rings. Preston knew how much they meant to me. I'm sorry, Eleanor said gently. We're trying to track them down, but pawn shops don't keep great records. We may not get them back. My father put his hand on my shoulder. We'll find something even better. Your mother would want you to have beautiful things. It's not about the value, I said quietly. It's about her. Those things connected me to her. I know. He squeezed my shoulder. And Preston knew that too. That's why he took them. He wanted to hurt you in every possible way. Eleanor continued the presentation. 2 months ago, Preston met Melissa Ashford at a charity gala. He researched her family immediately. Old money, excellent social connections, exactly what he needed for his next phase. He started dating her while still married to you. Started planning his exit strategy. The plan was to provoke Naomi into leaving him, an investigator named Gary added. He was a former police detective who specialized in financial crimes. He started becoming more critical of her, more demanding, hoping she'd get fed up and walk away. When that didn't work, he decided to force the issue. By throwing me out and claiming abandonment, I said. Exactly. He figured he'd paint you as unstable and unreliable. When the lawsuits and fraud charges started surfacing, he'd act shocked and claim you'd hidden your business dealings from him. Play the victim. Meanwhile, he'd be married to Melissa, living off her family money, and you'd be facing criminal charges. It almost worked, I said. But it didn't. Eleanor closed her laptop. Because you had resources Preston didn't know about. And now we have everything we need to destroy him. Over the next week, I met with 3 women Preston had dated before me. Eleanor had tracked them down through public records and social media. The first was Rachel, a dental hygienist from Pittsburgh. She sat across from me in Eleanor's office, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. "He told me he loved me after 2 weeks," Rachel said. "Said I was everything he'd ever wanted. Then he started asking about my family, my finances. When he found out I didn't have money saved, he lost interest. But not before he'd gotten me to co-sign a car lease. Stuck me with $20,000 in debt when he stopped making payments." The second woman was Jennifer, a teacher from Columbus. "Same pattern," she said. "Love bombing, then questions about money and family connections. He borrowed $5,000 from me for a business emergency and never paid it back. When I demanded the money, he threatened to ruin my reputation. Said he'd tell my school I was unstable." The third was Simone, a nurse from Cleveland. Her story made my blood run cold. "He got me pregnant," she said quietly. "I was so happy. We'd been together 8 months and he'd been talking about marriage. Then I miscarried. He was supportive for about a week. Then he started pulling away. I found out later he'd been telling people I'd trapped him on purpose, that I was mentally unstable and had made up the pregnancy. He destroyed my reputation in our social circle before disappearing." "Did you report him?" I asked. "To who?" "He didn't break any laws. He was just cruel. And convincing. People believed him over me." After she left, I sat with Eleanor in silence. "There's a pattern," Eleanor finally said. "He targets women who seem vulnerable in some way. Isolated, financially struggling, desperate for connection. He love bombs them, assesses their worth, and then either exploits them for money or discards them when they're not useful. You were different because of your father, but he didn't know that initially. He thought you were another easy target." "I was an easy target," I said. "I believed everything he said. You trusted your husband. That's not a weakness. That's normal." Eleanor pulled out a legal pad. "But here's what we can do now. We have testimony from 3 previous victims showing a pattern of behavior. We have documentation of the financial fraud. We have evidence of the identity theft. The district attorney is ready to file charges." "When?" "Tomorrow. But I need to ask you something first." Eleanor set down her pen. "This is going to be public. Very public. Preston's arrest will make the news. The trial will be covered by media. Your name will be attached to all of it. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Preston's face when he realized who my father was. About Melissa running back into the bedroom to call her daddy. About the neighbors filming everything. "I'm prepared," I said. "I want everyone to know what he did. Not just to me but to all those other women. If going public means one more woman doesn't fall for his lies, then it's worth it." Eleanor smiled. "That's what I hoped you'd say. Because we're about to make Preston Wells infamous for all the wrong reasons." The next day, Preston was arrested at his law firm in front of his colleagues. The charges included fraud, identity theft, forgery, and financial abuse. The local news covered it. By evening it had gone regional. My phone started ringing. Friends I hadn't heard from in years. Extended family. Even some reporters. I ignored most of them. But I did answer when Ray called. She'd been my best friend before Preston, back when we were in college together. We drifted apart after my wedding, something I now realized Preston had deliberately encouraged. "I'm sorry," were the first words out of my mouth. "For what?" Ray asked. "For disappearing. For letting him isolate me from everyone who cared about me. For being stupid enough to—" "Stop. You're not stupid. He was a predator. You were a target. There's a difference." Ray's voice was firm. "I tried to stay in touch. But every time I called, he had an excuse for why you couldn't talk. Eventually, I figured you didn't want me in your life anymore. I always wanted you in my life. He just made it impossible. Well, he's in jail now, so he can't stop us anymore. Want to get coffee and tell me everything?" We met the next day at our old favorite cafe. I told her the whole story. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to anger to determination. "What can I do to help?" she asked when I finished. "Just be my friend again. I missed having someone to talk to who wasn't a lawyer or investigator." "Done. And Naomi? I'm proud of you. Not everyone would fight back like this. A lot of people would have just walked away and tried to forget." "I thought about it," I admitted. "But then I thought about those other women. About the next person he'd target. Someone has to stop him. And that someone is you." Ray raised her coffee cup. "To stopping bad men and getting justice." I clinked my cup against hers. "To justice." That night, I had dinner with my father at his penthouse apartment. It was the first time I'd been there in 3 years. "The place looks different," I said. "I redecorated after you left. Too many memories. He poured wine. I kept your room exactly the same though. Just in case you ever wanted to come home. Dad. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I just want you to know you always had a place here. You always will. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. What happens next? I asked finally. The trial. Preston's attorney is trying to negotiate a plea deal, but Eleanor won't budge. She wants him in prison. What if he wins? He won't. The evidence is overwhelming. But even if he somehow did, you're protected now. All the fraudulent debts have been transferred to him legally. Your credit is being repaired. The lawsuits against you are being dismissed. Whatever happens to Preston, you're safe. I don't feel safe. I feel angry. Good. Anger is useful. It keeps you moving forward. He set down his fork. I want to show you something. He led me to his study and pulled out a large leather album. Inside were photos I'd never seen before. My mother, young and laughing. My parents on their wedding day. Me as a baby. Your mother was like you, he said. She believed in people. Trusted them. It got her hurt more than once. But she never let it make her cynical. She just got smarter about who deserved her trust. I don't feel smart. I feel like an idiot for not seeing what Preston was. Preston was good at what he did. He'd practiced on multiple women. He knew exactly how to manipulate and charm. You weren't an idiot. You were a good person who expected honesty from your partner. That's normal. He turned to a photo of my mother holding me. She would have been proud of you. Not because you're fighting back, but because even after everything Preston did, you're still kind. You still care about those other women he hurt. You still want to protect people from him. That's who you are. Preston couldn't destroy that. I leaned against my father's shoulder. I missed you so much. I missed you too, baby girl. But you're home now. And we're going to make sure Preston Wells regrets ever crossing our family. I want you to understand the full scope of what you walked away from, my father said over breakfast the next morning. We were in his penthouse dining room, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Below us, the streets were already packed with morning traffic. He slid a leather portfolio across the table. This is everything you would have inherited when you turned 25. I've kept it in trust, waiting for you to come back. I opened the portfolio with shaking hands. Inside were documents detailing assets I'd never imagined. Real estate holdings across 15 states. Investment portfolios worth hundreds of millions. Businesses my mother's family had built over 3 generations. I don't understand, I said. Mom came from money? Your mother was Helena Brightwell before she married me. The Brightwell family built their fortune in shipping and transportation in the 1800s. By the time your mother was born, they'd diversified into real estate, technology, manufacturing. Your grandfather was brilliant but traditional. He didn't believe women should run businesses. My father's expression darkened. Your mother proved him wrong. She took her inheritance and tripled it in 10 years. She was a genius at identifying emerging markets and investing early. When we met, I was nobody. A kid from Brooklyn trying to make it in real estate. She saw potential in me that no one else did. She invested in you? She did more than that. She partnered with me. We built Chin Reynolds Development together. Every major success we had, every building we developed, every deal we closed, that was both of us. Equals partners. He pulled out a photo of my mother standing in front of a construction site, wearing a hard hat and business suit, looking absolutely in control. When she died, I thought about selling everything. Couldn't bear to continue without her. But then I realized that would dishonor everything she'd built. So I kept going. Kept expanding. Kept building. For her. And for you. Why didn't you tell me about all this? I tried. But you were 12 when she died, and then you were a teenager who wanted to be normal. You didn't want to be the rich kid. You wanted to make your own way. I respected that. But I also made sure everything was protected for you. He pulled out another document. This is your trust. Currently valued at $850 million. It includes real estate holdings, stock portfolios, business interests, and liquid assets. You became eligible to access it when you turned 25, but you never asked. I stared at the number. $850 million. It didn't seem real. I was married to Preston and living paycheck to paycheck while I had access to this? You had access. You just never used it. The trust was set up so you could draw on it any time, but the statements went to an email address you stopped checking after you married Preston. He convinced you that you needed to cut all financial ties with me to prove your independence. He convinced me of a lot of things, I said bitterly. He convinced you to give up your birthright. Your mother's legacy. The empire she built for you. My father's voice was gentle but firm. And now I'm asking you to take it back. I don't know anything about running businesses or managing investments. Neither did I when I started. Your mother taught me. I'll teach you. And we have excellent people. Advisors, attorneys, accountants, managers. You don't have to do it alone. He stood and walked to the window. But more than that, Naomi, I want you to understand your own power. Preston treated you like you were worthless. Like you had nothing to offer except maybe access to money he thought he could steal. He was wrong. You come from brilliance. From strength. From people who built empires from nothing. I just want him to pay for what he did. He will. But that's not enough. My father turned to face me. I want you to take everything he thought he was stealing and use it to become more successful than he ever dreamed of being. I want you to walk into courtrooms and boardrooms and social events as exactly who you are, Helena Brightwell's daughter. Malcolm Chin Reynolds' daughter. An heiress to a fortune he couldn't even imagine. Something shifted inside me. The anger I'd been feeling crystallized into something sharper, more focused. What do I need to do? My father smiled. First, we're going to start your education. You're going to meet with every division head in our company. Learn what they do. Ask questions. Figure out what interests you. Then we're going to find your place in the empire. Over the next week, I did exactly that. I met with the head of residential development, who showed me projects ranging from affordable housing complexes to luxury condominiums. I sat in on a meeting with the commercial real estate team as they negotiated a lease for a downtown office tower. I toured construction sites with project managers who explained everything from foundation work to final finishing. I met with the investment team who managed our stock portfolios and explained market trends in language I could actually understand. I had lunch with the head of our property management division who oversaw 30,000 rental units. Every person I met treated me with respect. Not because of my father, but because they'd loved my mother and were genuinely excited to see her daughter taking interest in the business. Your mom had a gift for seeing what a neighborhood needed, the head of residential development told me. She'd walk through areas other developers ignored and see the potential. See the families who needed good affordable housing. See the small business owners who needed commercial space they could afford. She never built just to make money. She built to make communities better. I thought about the nonprofit where I'd been working, helping families find affordable housing and navigate the system. All along, my mother had been doing the same thing but on a much larger scale. I want to do that, I said. I want to build things that help people. My father arranged for me to sit in on a board meeting for the Brightwell Foundation, the charitable organization my mother had established before she died. They funded affordable housing initiatives, education programs, and small business development in underserved communities. We have an opening on the board, the foundation director said. We'd be honored if you'd consider joining us. I don't have experience with. You have your mother's heart. That's what matters most. The technical skills can be learned. I accepted the position. 2 days later, I attended my first board meeting and listened to proposals for 3 new affordable housing projects. The passion in the room was electric. These people genuinely cared about making a difference. After the meeting, an older woman approached me. You look just like Helena, she said. I worked with your mother for 15 years. She was the most brilliant, compassionate person I've ever known. We all miss her terribly. Thank you. I wish I'd known her as an adult. I was so young when she died. She talked about you constantly. Had such big dreams for you. She wanted you to have choices in life. The choice to build businesses like she did, or the choice to pursue any other passion. She just wanted you to be happy and free. Free, I repeated. Preston took that from me. Then take it back. That's what your mother would have said. She never let anyone diminish her. And she wouldn't want anyone diminishing you. That evening, I met with Eleanor to review the case against Preston. His attorney is getting desperate, she said. They've offered 3 different plea deals in the last week. We've rejected all of them. What are they offering? Probation, restitution, community service. No jail time. They're arguing that Preston is a first-time offender who made bad financial decisions but didn't intend to harm anyone. That's ridiculous. He absolutely intended to harm me. He planned it for months. I know. And we're going to prove that in court. But I want you to be prepared. His attorney is going to come after you hard. They're going to try to make this about you hiding your wealth from your husband. About you being vindictive because he left you for another woman. They're going to try to make you look like the villain. Let them try, I said. I have nothing to hide. Actually, we should talk about that. Eleanor pulled out a file. Preston's attorney has been digging into your background. They found out about the trust. They're going to argue that you committed fraud by not disclosing your assets during the marriage. But I didn't access the money. I didn't even think about it. Legally, you still should have disclosed it. It won't affect the criminal case. What Preston did was illegal regardless of your financial situation. But it might complicate the divorce proceedings. How? He's going to ask for spousal support? Going to claim he gave up career opportunities to support your nonprofit work? That he's accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and that you can afford to maintain him in that lifestyle? I laughed. Actually laughed. He wants my money? After everything he did? He wants to hurt you any way he can. And he's arrogant enough to think he might win. He won't, my father said from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. Because we're going to show exactly what kind of man Preston Wells is. And by the time we're done, no one will believe anything his attorney says. Eleanor nodded. We have character witnesses lined up. The 3 women he scammed before Naomi. Colleagues from his previous law firms who can testify to his dishonesty. Expert witnesses who can walk the jury through the fraud step by step. And we have Preston himself, his social media posts, his emails, his text messages. All of it shows a pattern of manipulation and deceit. When is the trial? I asked. 6 weeks. The prosecution is moving fast because they have such a strong case. Preston's attorney is trying to delay, but the judge denied the motion. 6 weeks. 6 weeks until I'd have to sit in a courtroom and face Preston. 6 weeks until the whole story would be public. I can do this, I said. I know you can, Eleanor said. But it's going to be hard. Are you sure you're ready? I thought about my mother building an empire. About the women Preston had destroyed before me. About the person I'd been before I met him, confident, independent, strong. I'm ready, I said. Let's make sure Preston Wells never hurts anyone else again. The next morning, my father took me to his office for the first time in 3 years. Chin Reynolds Development occupied the top 10 floors of a downtown high-rise. The lobby was all glass and steel, modern and impressive. You used to love coming here as a kid, my father said as we rode the elevator to the executive floor. You'd sit in my office and draw pictures of buildings. Your mother said you were going to be an architect. I forgot about that. I used to design whole cities in my notebooks. You had vision. Still do. You just haven't had the chance to use it. The executive floor was buzzing with activity. People nodded respectfully as we walked past. My father's office was at the end of a long hallway, with windows overlooking the entire city. This is where you'll work, he said, opening the door to the office next to his. It was smaller but just as beautifully appointed, with a desk, conference table, and the same stunning view. Dad, I can't just. Yes, you can. Your family. More than that, you're a major shareholder in this company. You own 20% through your mother's trust. You have every right to be here. He gestured to the desk. This was your mother's office. I kept it exactly as she left it. Been waiting for you to take it over. I walked around the desk, running my hand along the smooth wood. There was a photo of my parents on their wedding day. Another of me as a baby. A third of all 3 of us at the beach, laughing. She loved this work, my father said softly. She loved building things that lasted. Creating spaces where people could live and work and thrive. She used to say that real estate wasn't about buildings, it was about communities. About giving people foundations to build their lives on. I don't know if I can live up to that. You already do. You've spent the last 3 years working at a nonprofit helping families find affordable housing. You have the same instincts she did. The same heart. You just need to learn the business side. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into learning everything I could. I attended meetings, reviewed proposals, studied market analyses. My father paired me with mentors who patiently explained everything from zoning laws to construction financing. I discovered I loved it. The problem solving, the creativity, the satisfaction of seeing a project move from concept to reality. I started making suggestions in meetings, asking questions that led to better solutions. You're a natural, the head of development told me after I proposed a modification to an affordable housing project that would increase efficiency while reducing costs. That's exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. But even as I found my footing in the business world, the upcoming trial loomed over everything. Eleanor called regular meetings to prepare me for testimony. Preston's attorney is going to try to rattle you, she said. They'll ask about your relationship, your decision to marry against your father's advice, your estrangement from your family. They're going to try to paint you as someone who makes impulsive, bad decisions. How do I respond to that? Honestly, you fell in love with someone who lied to you. That's not a character flaw. That's being human. Eleanor pulled out a legal pad. But we need to talk about something else. Something difficult. She slid a document across the table. It was a letter from Melissa Ashford's attorney. She wants to testify, Eleanor said. Against Preston. I stared at the letter. Why would she do that? Because she's in trouble too. The district attorney is looking at whether she knew about the fraud. Whether she was complicit. Her attorney thinks testifying against Preston might help her avoid charges. What does she know? According to her statement, Preston told her you were mentally unstable. That you'd racked up massive debts and he was trying to protect himself by divorcing you. She claims she had no idea he was committing fraud or that he'd used your identity for illegal business deals. Do you believe her? I think she's telling the truth about not knowing the full extent of the fraud. But I also think she knew something was wrong and chose to ignore it because Preston was offering her the lifestyle she wanted. I thought about Melissa wearing my robe, standing in my house, looking at me with that false sympathy. I don't want her testimony, I said. Naomi, her testimony could be powerful. She can speak to Preston's character, his lies, his manipulation. A jury hearing from his own girlfriend that he lied to her too, that's compelling. I don't care. I don't want anything from her. I don't want to be in the same courtroom as her. I don't want her help. This isn't about helping you. This is about making sure Preston goes to prison. Then find another way. Use the other women he hurt. Use the financial records. Use anything except her. Eleanor looked at me for a long moment. Can I ask why this is so important to you? Because she chose to be with a married man. She wore my clothes, slept in my bed, stood there while he humiliated me. I don't care if she was lied to. She still made choices that hurt me. And I'm not going to let her turn around and play the victim now. Fair enough. I'll tell her attorney we're declining the testimony. After Eleanor left, I sat alone in my new office looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Preston was preparing his defense. Probably still convinced he could charm his way out of consequences. Still believing the rules didn't apply to him. Ray stopped by that afternoon with coffee and sympathy. You look exhausted, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. I feel exhausted. Between learning the business and preparing for trial, I barely have time to sleep. Are you sure you want to do both at the same time? You could delay your involvement in the company until after the trial. No. I need this. I need to remember who I am beyond Preston's victim. I need to build something. Ray nodded. I get that. But you also need to take care of yourself. When's the last time you did something just for fun? I couldn't remember. That's what I thought, Ray said. So tonight we're going out. No lawyers, no business meetings, no talk about Preston. Just two friends having dinner and remembering what normal feels like. We went to our old favorite restaurant, a small Italian place we'd frequented in college. The owner recognized me immediately. Naomi, I haven't seen you in so long. Where have you been? Life got complicated, I said. But I'm back now. We ordered our usual dishes and spent 2 hours just talking. About Ray's job as a graphic designer. About her new relationship with a woman she'd met at a coffee shop. About movies and books and all the normal things I'd forgotten how to discuss. I've missed this, I admitted. I've missed having a life that isn't consumed by legal drama. The trial will be over soon. Then you can focus on building your empire and living your best life. Ray raised her wine glass. To new beginnings and leaving trash men in the past where they belong. We clinked glasses and for the first time in weeks I felt genuinely happy. The next day Eleanor called with news. The other 3 women have agreed to testify, she said. Rachel, Jennifer, and Simone. They're all willing to describe their experiences with Preston and establish a pattern of behavior. That's good, right? It's excellent. It shows the jury this wasn't a one-time mistake or a marriage gone bad. This is a pattern of predatory behavior spanning years. Combined with the financial evidence, it's devastating for his defense. When do they testify? After the prosecution establishes the financial crimes. We want the jury to understand what Preston did to you, then show them he's done similar things to other women. It creates a complete picture of who he is. Have you met them? All 3. They're nervous but determined. They want to see Preston held accountable, not just for what he did to them, but to prevent him from hurting anyone else. I thought about what the woman from the foundation had said, about my mother never letting anyone diminish her. I want to meet them, I said, before the trial. I want to thank them for being brave enough to testify. Eleanor arranged a meeting at her office. I was nervous walking in, not sure what to expect. The three women were already there, sitting together on a couch. They stood when I entered. "Thank you for agreeing to see us," Rachel said. She was petite with curly brown hair and kind eyes. "We wanted to meet you too. To see that you're okay," Jennifer added. She was tall and athletic with an air of quiet strength. "And to make sure you know you're not alone," Simone finished. She had a gentle smile despite the pain in her eyes. We sat together and for a while no one spoke. "I'm sorry he hurt you too," I finally said. "We're sorry he hurt you," Rachel said. "When we saw the news about his arrest, we weren't surprised. We knew he'd eventually go too far with someone." "How did you find the strength to testify?" I asked. "We didn't at first," Jennifer admitted. "When Eleanor's investigator contacted us, we were all scared. Scared of facing him in court, scared of having our stories questioned, scared of being called liars or bitter ex-girlfriends. But then we thought about the next woman," Simone said. "The one who'd meet charming Preston and believe his lies because we stayed silent. The one who'd end up destroyed like we were. We couldn't live with that." "You're braver than I gave you credit for," I said. "So are you," Rachel said. "You're fighting back. A lot of women in your position wouldn't. They'd take the divorce and run. But you're making sure he faces consequences." "I don't feel brave. I feel angry." "Anger is good," Simone said. "Anger keeps you moving when fear tries to stop you. I wish I'd been angry enough to fight back when he was hurting me." We talked for over an hour, sharing our stories, finding common ground in our experiences. By the time we left, I felt less alone. "Thank you," I told them, "for doing this, for being willing to stand up in court and tell the truth. Thank you for giving us the chance," Rachel said, "for finally giving us justice." That night I called my father. "I've made a decision," I said. "What's that?" "After the trial, I want to start a foundation. Something focused on helping women who've been financially abused. Legal support, counseling, emergency housing, job training. Everything they need to escape and rebuild." "That's a wonderful idea. I want to fund it through my trust. Use the money Preston tried to steal to help other women escape men like him." My father was quiet for a moment. "Your mother would have loved that. She always believed the best revenge was building something beautiful from the ashes of something terrible." "The best revenge is a life well lived," I said. "That's what one of the women told me today. And she's right. Preston wanted to destroy me. The best way to fight back is to become more successful, more powerful, and more impactful than he ever imagined." "When do you want to start?" "As soon as the trial is over. I want to walk out of that courtroom and immediately start building something that matters." "Then that's what we'll do." I hung up feeling more certain than I had in months. Preston had tried to take everything from me, but he'd failed. And now I was going to use his failure to help others succeed. The best revenge wasn't destroying Preston. The best revenge was becoming exactly who I was meant to be. The courthouse was intimidating. I'd never been inside one before. Eleanor met me outside at 7 in the morning, even though the trial didn't start until 9. "I want to walk you through what's going to happen," she said. "First, jury selection was completed last week. We have 12 jurors, 7 women, 5 men. Mix of ages and backgrounds. The prosecution feels good about them." "And Preston's attorney?" "Mitchell Granger. He's expensive, probably being paid by Melissa's family at this point since Preston's assets are frozen. He's good at creating reasonable doubt, at making complex financial crimes seem like simple misunderstandings. But he's never faced a case with this much evidence." We walked through security and into the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd imagined, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights. The judge's bench dominated one end. 2 tables faced it, one for the prosecution, one for the defense. "You'll sit behind the prosecution table," Eleanor explained. "You're not on trial, so you don't sit at the table itself. But you'll be visible to the jury, and that's important. I want them to see you. To remember this is about a real person who was hurt, not just abstract financial crimes." "What if they don't believe me?" "They will. Because we're going to show them everything. The forged signatures, the fraudulent accounts, the lies. There's no room for doubt in this case." At 8:30, people started filling the courtroom. I recognized some of Preston's former colleagues from his law firm. Some neighbors from our old street. A few reporters. Then Preston walked in. He'd lost weight. His suit was expensive but hung on him oddly, like he'd bought it when he was heavier. His hair was styled perfectly, his shoes polished. He looked like he was going to a business meeting, not a criminal trial. His eyes met mine across the courtroom. For a moment, I saw rage flash across his face. Then he smiled. Actually smiled like we were old friends catching up. I looked away. Melissa wasn't there. According to Eleanor, she'd been told to stay away to avoid any appearance of supporting Preston's defense. At 9 o'clock sharp, the judge entered. Everyone stood. The People versus Preston James Wells, the judge announced. We are here for trial on charges of fraud, identity theft, forgery, and financial abuse. Is the prosecution ready? The lead prosecutor, a woman named Diana Martinez, stood. Ready, Your Honor. Defense. Mitchell Granger stood. Ready, Your Honor. Then let's begin with opening statements. Diana Martinez approached the jury. She was in her 40s, dressed in a professional but not flashy suit. She spoke clearly, making eye contact with each juror. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Over the next several days, you're going to hear a story about trust and betrayal. About a man who identified vulnerable women, won their trust, and then exploited them for financial gain. This isn't a story about a marriage that didn't work out. This is a story about deliberate, calculated crime. She clicked a remote, and a screen lit up behind her showing Preston's photo next to a timeline. Preston Wells has a pattern. He meets women, assesses their worth, both emotional and financial, and then extracts everything he can from them before moving on to his next target. In the case of Naomi Chin Reynolds, he married her believing she came from wealth. When she maintained her independence from her family's money, he created an elaborate scheme to steal from her, ruin her credit, and frame her for crimes she didn't commit. The timeline showed dates and events. When Preston met me, when we married, when various fraudulent documents were signed. The evidence will show that Preston Wells forged his wife's signature at least 14 times. That he opened credit cards in her name without her knowledge. That he created a business listing her as managing partner and signed contracts in her name, making her liable for hundreds of thousands in debt. That he changed her contact information on official documents to hide his crimes. And that when he was done extracting what he could, he discarded her in the most cruel and public way possible. Diana paused, letting that sink in. But this case isn't just about what Preston Wells did to Naomi Chin Reynolds. We will present testimony from 3 other women who experienced similar patterns of behavior. Women he dated, manipulated, and financially exploited before Naomi. Because this is who Preston Wells is, a predator who targets women and destroys their lives for his own gain. She clicked to a new slide showing bank records and financial documents. The evidence is overwhelming. The signatures are forged. The accounts are fraudulent. The business deals are illegal. Preston Wells committed these crimes knowingly and deliberately. And when you've heard all the evidence, we will ask you to find him guilty on all charges. She sat down. Mitchell Granger stood and approached the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard the prosecution paint my client as a monster. A predator. A criminal. But the reality is much simpler. This is a bitter divorce where a wealthy woman is using her resources to destroy her ex-husband. I felt Eleanor tense beside me, but she stayed quiet. Preston Wells did make mistakes in his marriage. He fell in love with someone else. He handled the separation poorly. But those are not crimes. Those are human failings. Granger gestured toward Preston, who looked appropriately remorseful. What the prosecution won't tell you is that Naomi Chin Reynolds is the daughter of a billionaire. That she has access to resources most people can't imagine. That she has teams of investigators and expensive attorneys who've spent months building a case designed to punish Preston for leaving her. He pulled up a photo of my father's office building. This is Chin Reynolds Development, owned by Naomi's father, Malcolm Chin Reynolds. They occupy 10 floors of prime downtown real estate. They're worth billions with a B. And they've used that wealth and power to turn a failed marriage into a criminal prosecution. I wanted to stand up and scream that none of that was true. That Preston had committed actual crimes. But Eleanor's hand on my arm kept me in my seat. The prosecution will show you documents with Naomi's signature, Granger continued. But Preston will testify that Naomi signed those documents willingly. That she was an active participant in their business ventures. That she only claimed fraud after the marriage ended and she wanted revenge. That's a lie, I whispered. I know, Eleanor whispered back. But he's allowed to say it. We'll destroy it with evidence. As for the other women, Granger continued, they're bitter ex-girlfriends with axes to grind. Failed relationships looking for someone to blame. None of them ever filed police reports. None of them pursued legal action until Naomi Chin Reynolds' expensive attorneys came calling with promises of justice. He faced the jury directly. This case is about a powerful family using the justice system to settle a personal score. Preston Wells is not a criminal. He's a man going through a divorce who had the misfortune of marrying into a vindictive, wealthy family. We ask that you see through the smoke and mirrors and recognize this for what it is, a waste of the court's time and resources." He sat down looking confident. The judge called for a short recess. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. "He's lying," I told Eleanor when she found me. "Everything he said was a lie." "Of course it was. That's his job. But we have evidence. Facts. Documentation. His lies can't stand up to that." "What if the jury believes him?" "They won't. Trust me. By the time we're done presenting our case, there will be no doubt about what Preston did." The trial resumed with the prosecution calling their first witness, Gary, the investigator who tracked Preston's financial crimes. Diana Martinez led him through his findings methodically. Bank records showing transfers from my accounts to offshore accounts. Credit card applications with forged signatures. Business documents listing me as managing partner on ventures I'd never heard of. "Can you explain how you verified these signatures were forged?" Diana asked. "I compared them to known samples of Mrs. Wells's signature from her driver's license, passport, and employment documents. The signatures on the fraudulent documents show clear differences in letter formation, pressure points, and flow. Additionally, several were signed with a ballpoint pen when Mrs. Wells only uses gel pens, a small detail but telling." Gary pulled up side-by-side comparisons on the screen. Even I could see the differences. I also analyzed the dates. Several documents were allegedly signed by Mrs. Wells on dates when she was verifiably somewhere else. For example, this loan application claiming to be signed by her on March 15th was supposedly signed at a bank in Cleveland. But Mrs. Wells's cell phone records show she was in our city that entire day, at work at the nonprofit where she's employed. "How did you obtain cell phone records?" "With Mrs. Wells's permission and cooperation. She provided full access to all her accounts, passwords, and records. She had nothing to hide." Mitchell Granger cross-examined, trying to poke holes in Gary's testimony. "Isn't it possible Mrs. Wells signed these documents and simply doesn't remember?" "No. The forensic analysis is clear. These are not her signatures." "But you're not a handwriting expert." "Actually, I am. I'm certified by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners and have testified as an expert witness in over 50 cases." Granger changed tactics. "Isn't it true you were hired by Malcolm Chin Reynolds, a billionaire with unlimited resources to pursue this case?" "I was hired to investigate potential financial crimes. My findings are based on evidence, not who's paying my fee." "How much has Malcolm Chin Reynolds paid you for this investigation?" "Objection," Diana said. "Relevance. I'm establishing bias, Your Honor." "I'll allow it," the judge said. Gary named a figure. It was substantial. "That's a lot of money for someone to pay to destroy their daughter's ex-husband," Granger said. "Objection. Argumentative. Sustained." "Move on, Mr. Granger." The cross-examination continued, but Gary held firm. His testimony was solid. The next witness was a banking expert who explained how the offshore accounts were set up and how money was transferred without my knowledge. Then a credit specialist who detailed how my credit score had been destroyed by fraudulent applications. By the end of the first day, the prosecution had established a clear pattern of financial crimes. The jury looked engaged, taking notes, clearly paying attention. "That went well," Eleanor said as we left the courthouse. "Tomorrow they'll call the other women. That's when things get emotional." I went home, to my father's penthouse, which had become my home again, exhausted, but also hopeful. Preston's lies were being exposed. The truth was coming out. Justice was possible. The second day of trial started with Rachel taking the stand. She looked terrified, her hands shaking as she was sworn in. Diana Martinez approached her gently. "Can you tell the jury how you met Preston Wells?" "We met at a coffee shop 4 years ago. He was charming, attentive. He seemed genuinely interested in me." Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. The judge asked her to speak up. "What happened after you started dating?" "At first, everything was perfect. He texted constantly, wanted to spend all his time with me, said I was the woman he'd been looking for his whole life. Then he started asking questions about my family, my finances. How much I made, whether I had savings, if my parents had money. Did that seem odd to you?" "A little. But he framed it as wanting to build a future together. Said we needed to be practical about money. I believed him." "What happened next?" "About 2 months in, he said he needed help. His car had broken down and he needed it for work. Could I co-sign a lease? He promised he'd make all the payments. I believed him." Rachel wiped her eyes. He made 2 payments then stopped. I got stuck with $20,000 in debt. Did you confront him? I tried. He said he'd lost his job, was going through a rough time, needed my support. I stayed because I thought I loved him. Then he just disappeared. Stopped answering calls, blocked me on social media. I later found out he'd moved to another city. Did you report this to police? No. I was embarrassed. Ashamed. I thought it was my fault for being stupid enough to trust him. Mitchell Granger's cross-examination was brutal. Isn't it true you willingly signed that lease? Yes, but... Yes or no, please. You signed it willingly? Yes. And Preston never forced you to sign? No, but he lied about. Yes or no? Did he physically force you? No. So you made a bad decision and now you want to blame my client for your poor judgment? Objection. Diana stood. Argumentative. Sustained. Mr. Granger, ask questions, don't argue with the witness. But the damage was done. Granger had made Rachel seem foolish, impulsive. Jennifer's testimony was similar. She described being love-bombed, then financially exploited when Preston borrowed money for a fake emergency. Simone talked about the emotional abuse, the lies about her pregnancy, the destruction of her reputation. Each time, Granger made them seem like bitter ex-girlfriends. Women scorned. Liars seeking revenge. I could see some jurors starting to look skeptical. Then it was my turn. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking to an execution. Preston watched me with that same cold smile. I kept my eyes on Diana Martinez. Please state your name for the record. Naomi Chin Reynolds. And you were married to the defendant, Preston Wells? Yes. Can you tell the jury how you met? I described the coffee shop, the instant connection, the whirlwind romance. How Preston had seemed perfect. Thoughtful, ambitious, kind. Did he ask about your family? Yes. I told him I was estranged from my father. That I'd chosen to make my own way without family money. How did he react to that? He said he admired my independence. That it was one of the things he loved about me. Did he ever pressure you to reconcile with your family? A few times. He'd suggest that family was important, that maybe I was being too stubborn. But I thought he was just being caring. Diana walked me through the marriage. The financial control, the mysterious investments, the documents he'd had me sign. Did you ever willingly sign documents for business ventures with your husband? No. The only thing I remember signing was what he said was insurance paperwork. He was in a rush, said it was just a formality. I trusted him. Did you know he was opening credit cards in your name? No. Taking out loans? No. Creating businesses listing you as managing partner? No. I found out about all of it from my father's investigators after Preston threw me out. Can you describe what happened the day he ended the marriage? I took a deep breath and told the story. Coming home to my belongings on the lawn. Preston and Melissa in the doorway. His cruel words about me being too local, too simple, not good enough. Several jurors looked shocked. One woman looked angry. How did that make you feel? Like I was nothing. Like 3 years of marriage meant nothing. Like I was disposable garbage. My voice cracked. He didn't just end our marriage. He tried to destroy me as a person. No further questions. Mitchell Granger approached for cross-examination. He looked confident. Ms. Chin Reynolds, you testified that you're estranged from your family. Is that still true? No. I reconciled with my father after the marriage ended. Convenient timing. Right when you needed his money and lawyers? Objection. Sustained. Mr. Granger, that's inappropriate. Let me rephrase. You have access to substantial wealth through your family, correct? I have a trust fund from my mother, yes. How much is it worth? I don't see how that's relevant. Please answer the question. Approximately $850 million. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge called for order. $850 million, Granger repeated. And you never told your husband about this? I didn't access it during our marriage. I was living on my salary from the nonprofit. But you could have accessed it at any time? Technically, yes. So while your husband was struggling to build a career, pay bills, manage finances, you were secretly sitting on a fortune of $850 million? I wasn't. Yes or no? Did you have access to that money? Yes. And did you tell Preston about it? No. So you lied to him about your financial situation? I didn't lie. I told him I was estranged from my family. A lie of omission is still a lie, Ms. Chin Reynolds. Granger paced in front of the jury. You let Preston believe you were poor. You let him pay bills, manage finances, stress about money, all while you had access to hundreds of millions of dollars. Isn't that a form of fraud? Objection. This is not what's on trial here. Your Honor, I'm establishing that both parties had secrets. That this marriage was based on mutual deception. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Mr. Granger. The cross-examination continued for another hour. Granger twisted everything, made me look manipulative and vindictive. By the time I stepped down, I felt sick. He made me look terrible, I told Eleanor during lunch recess. He made you look human. The jury saw someone who was hurt and is fighting back. That's not a bad thing. The afternoon brought expert witnesses. Forensic accountants who walked through the fraud step by step. Handwriting analysts who confirmed the signatures were forged. A computer expert who showed how Preston had accessed my email and changed my contact information on official documents. By the end of the second day, the evidence was overwhelming. Day 3 was Preston's turn to testify. I'd been dreading this. He took the stand looking humble, apologetic. Mitchell Granger led him through his version of events. I loved Naomi, Preston said, his voice breaking. I wanted to build a life with her. When she told me she was estranged from her family, I believed we were partners. Both of us making our own way. When did you discover her family's wealth? Not until recently. I had no idea who her father was. No idea about the trust fund. He looked at the jury with wounded eyes. When I found out, I felt betrayed. Like our entire marriage had been based on a lie. Tell the jury about the business ventures. I was trying to build something for us. A better future. I asked Naomi to be a partner in several investments. She signed all the paperwork willingly. We discussed everything. The prosecution claims you forged her signature. That's not true. Naomi signed everything. She was excited about building wealth together. It wasn't until the businesses failed and we had financial problems that she started claiming she didn't know about them. And the separation? I admit I handled it poorly. I fell in love with someone else. I should have been more compassionate about ending the marriage. But I never committed fraud. I never stole from her. I just made the mistake of falling out of love with my wife. It was a masterful performance. Preston looked sincere, hurt, misunderstood. Diana Martinez's cross-examination was fierce. Mr. Wells, you testified you had no idea about Naomi's family wealth. Is that true? Yes. Then can you explain these search history records from your computer? She pulled up screenshots. Searches for Malcolm Chin Reynolds' net worth, Chin Reynolds Development, Helena Brightwell family fortune. All conducted 2 months before you met Naomi. Preston's face went white. I don't remember those searches. These are from your laptop. Authenticated by forensic analysis. You researched Naomi's family before you ever met her. I might have been researching the company for work purposes. You worked at a small law firm doing contract law. Why would you research a real estate development company? I don't recall. You researched Naomi's family, identified her as a target, and manufactured a meeting at the coffee shop she frequented. Isn't that true? No. You asked the barista about her schedule. We have witness testimony confirming this. Preston looked rattled now. I was interested in her. I asked when she usually came in. That's not a crime. It's not a crime. But it is evidence of premeditation. You targeted Naomi specifically because of her family's wealth. The cross-examination continued, with Diana systematically destroying Preston's testimony. She showed evidence of the forged signatures, the hidden accounts, the illegal business deals. You created businesses in your wife's name without her knowledge, correct? She knew. Then why are all the incorporation documents filed from your computer IP address? Why are all the emails about these businesses from your accounts? Why is there no evidence of Naomi's participation except forged signatures? She participated verbally. We discussed everything. And yet you never sent her a single email about these businesses. Never texted her about them. Never included her on any documentation except forged signatures. That's awfully convenient. By the time Diana finished, Preston looked defeated. The final day was closing arguments. Diana Martinez stood before the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard a lot of testimony over the past 3 days. The defense wants you to believe this is a bitter divorce. A wealthy woman seeking revenge. But the evidence tells a different story. She pulled up a timeline. Preston Wells researched Naomi's family before meeting her. He targeted her specifically. When she didn't give him access to her family's money, he stole from her. He forged her signature at least 14 times. He created businesses in her name. He destroyed her credit. And when he'd extracted everything he could, he discarded her for a wealthier target. This isn't about revenge. This is about justice for Naomi and for all the women Preston Wells has victimized. The evidence is overwhelming. The signatures are forged. The accounts are fraudulent. The crimes are clear. We ask you to hold Preston Wells accountable and find him guilty on all charges. Mitchell Granger's closing was desperate. The prosecution wants you to believe Preston Wells is a monster. A predator. But where's the proof? Signatures that experts from opposing sides disagree about? Business deals that went bad? Failed relationships? These things happen. They're not crimes. What is a crime is using unlimited wealth to pursue a vendetta. Malcolm Chin Reynolds has spent millions to destroy his daughter's ex-husband. That should concern you. Because if they can do this to Preston Wells, they can do it to anyone. I ask you to see through the smoke and mirrors. To recognize reasonable doubt when you see it. And to find Preston Wells not guilty. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I sat with Eleanor and my father in a waiting room, unable to eat or drink or think about anything except those 12 people deciding Preston's fate. Finally, the bailiff called us back. The jury filed in. None of them looked at Preston. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "That's a good sign," she whispered. The judge addressed the jury. "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreman stood. "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of fraud in the first degree, how do you find?" "Guilty." Preston's face went white. "On the charge of identity theft?" "Guilty." "On the charge of forgery?" "Guilty." "On the charge of financial abuse?" "Guilty." "Guilty on all counts." Preston stood, his attorney trying to calm him. "This is wrong." She lied. "Her father bought this verdict." "Order." The judge banged her gavel. "Mr. Wells, you will remain silent or be held in contempt." Preston slumped in his chair, his face in his hands. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks later and dismissed the jury. I walked out of the courtroom in a daze. It was over. Preston had been found guilty. He would face consequences. Outside, reporters swarmed us. My father's security kept them back, but I could hear their questions. "Miss Chin Reynolds, how does it feel to get justice? Will you pursue civil damages? What message do you have for other victims of financial abuse?" Eleanor stepped forward to make a statement while my father led me to the car. "It's done," he said. "It's finally done." I started crying. Relief, exhaustion, joy, anger, everything I'd been holding in for months poured out. "He's going to prison," I said. "Yes, he is. And you're free." 3 weeks later, we returned for sentencing. Preston looked broken, nothing like the confident man who'd thrown me out 4 months earlier. The judge was stern. "Mr. Wells, you have been found guilty of serious crimes. You targeted vulnerable women, exploited them financially, and destroyed their lives for your own gain. You showed no remorse even during trial. You blamed your victims and played the victim yourself. I'm taking into account the multiple victims, the premeditation, and the lack of remorse. On the combined charges, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison followed by 5 years probation. You will also pay restitution to all victims in amounts to be determined by the court." 8 years. Preston would be in his 40s when he got out. His law career was over. His reputation was destroyed. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. Not with that cold smile. With pure hatred. I looked back steadily. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Outside the courthouse, I gave my first public statement. Today justice was served. But this isn't just about one man going to prison. This is about showing that financial abuse is real, that it has consequences, and that victims can fight back. To anyone going through something similar, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you have the right to seek justice. The cameras flashed. Questions flew. But I was done talking about Preston Wells. It was time to build something better. 6 months after Preston's sentencing, I stood in front of a room full of reporters and community leaders at the grand opening of the Brightwell Foundation Center for Financial Justice. The center occupied an entire floor of one of my father's downtown buildings. We'd renovated it into a welcoming space with private consultation rooms, a resource library, computer labs, and a childcare area. This center represents my mother's legacy and my own commitment to helping women escape financial abuse, I said, looking out at the crowd. We offer free legal consultations, financial counseling, emergency grants, job training, and housing assistance. Everything a woman needs to rebuild her life after leaving an abusive situation. The crowd applauded. Ray stood in the front row, beaming with pride. Next to her was Rachel, who joined our staff as a victim advocate. Jennifer and Simone were there too, both having become volunteers. We're also partnering with law enforcement to improve how financial abuse cases are investigated and prosecuted. Too often, these crimes are dismissed as civil matters or relationship problems. We're working to change that. After my speech, I did a tour for the press. We'd already helped 37 women in our pilot program. Women who'd escaped situations similar to mine. Women who needed support, resources, and people who believed them. One woman, Teresa, had agreed to share her story with the press. My husband controlled all our money for 15 years, she said. I didn't even have a bank account in my name. When I finally left, I had nothing. The Brightwell Foundation gave me emergency housing, helped me open a bank account, connected me with an attorney, and got me enrolled in a job training program. 3 months later, I have my own apartment and a full-time job. They gave me my life back. After the tour, I returned to my office at Chin Reynolds Development. I was now Vice President of Community Development, overseeing all our affordable housing initiatives. My latest project was a mixed-income apartment complex that would provide quality housing at various price points. 20% of units would be reserved for families transitioning from homelessness or domestic violence situations. The zoning board approved it, my assistant told me. Construction starts in 2 months. I pulled up the architectural plans on my computer. The building was beautiful, modern but warm, with community spaces, a playground, and green areas. The kind of place people could build real lives. My mother would have loved this, my father said, appearing in my doorway. I hope so. I keep wondering if I'm doing it right. You're doing better than right. You're changing lives. He sat down across from my desk. I have something for you. He handed me a small box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant, the letter B in an elegant script. It was your mother's, the Brightwell family crest. I've been saving it for the right moment. I put it on, feeling the weight of it, the legacy it represented. Thank you, Dad. You've made me very proud, Naomi. Not because you fought back against Preston, but because you took that pain and turned it into purpose. That's exactly what your mother would have done. We had dinner that night at his penthouse, our weekly tradition. Over pasta and wine, we discussed business, the foundation, life. Have you thought about dating? He asked carefully. Not really. I'm focused on work right now. I understand. But don't let Preston steal that from you too. Not all men are like him. I know. I'm just not ready yet. 2 weeks later, I was doing a site visit at our new affordable housing project when I met Daniel Morrison, the lead architect. He was tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. We walked the site together, discussing design elements and community needs. I really like what you're doing with the common areas, I said, pointing to the plans. Making them inviting but not institutional. That's the goal. I grew up in public housing. The buildings were functional but cold. No one wanted to gather in the common areas because they felt like government waiting rooms. I wanted to create spaces that feel like home. You grew up in public housing? Yeah. Single mom, 3 kids, not a lot of money. But we made it work. Actually, that's why I became an architect. I wanted to design buildings that gave families like mine dignity, not just shelter. We talked for an hour about architecture, community design, his childhood, my work with the foundation. Would you like to grab coffee sometime? He asked. To discuss the project more, I mean. I hesitated. Then I saw the genuine interest in his eyes. Not calculation. Not assessment of my worth. Just honest interest. I'd like that, I said. Coffee led to dinner. Dinner led to more dates. Daniel was different from Preston in every way. He asked about my day and actually listened. He had his own career, his own passions, his own life. He didn't try to control my schedule or question my choices. My ex-husband was very different, I told him one evening over dinner. I know. I saw the news coverage. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. I can't imagine what you went through. But I want you to know, I'm not him. I'm not interested in your money or your connections. I'm interested in you. The woman who's passionate about affordable housing and helping abuse survivors. The woman who gets excited about building codes and community design. That's who I want to know. How do I know you mean that? You don't? Not yet. But I hope you'll give me the chance to prove it over time. No pressure. No expectations. Just 2 people getting to know each other. It wasn't a lightning bolt of instant love like Preston had been. It was something quieter, steadier. Something that felt real. At work, my division was thriving. We'd launched 3 new affordable housing projects and partnered with the city to rehabilitate 2 neglected neighborhoods. You have your mother's gift for this, my father said during a board meeting. seeing potential where others see problems. I'd also been appointed to the Brightwell Foundation board. We'd expanded our services, opening satellite offices in 3 other cities. We'd helped over 200 women in our first year. Preston's early release request was denied. He'd serve his full sentence. Melissa had quietly married someone else, an actual wealthy businessman this time. I saw the announcement in the society pages and felt nothing. She was irrelevant to my life. 1 year after Preston's sentencing, I was invited to speak at a national conference on domestic violence prevention. Financial abuse is often the most invisible form of domestic abuse, I told the audience of advocates, attorneys, and survivors. There are no physical bruises. No emergency room visits. Just the slow destruction of a person's economic security and independence. I shared my story. Not as a victim but as someone who'd survived and rebuilt. Preston Wells took 3 years of my life. He stole my money, my credit, my sense of safety. But he couldn't take my resilience. He couldn't take my family's support. He couldn't take my determination to build something better from the ashes of what he destroyed. The audience gave me a standing ovation. After my speech, dozens of women approached me. Some to share their own stories. Some to thank me for speaking out. Some to ask for help. I gave each one a card for the Brightwell Foundation and promised that help was available. "You saved my life," one woman told me. "I was in a situation just like yours. When I saw your story on the news, I realized I wasn't crazy. That what was happening to me was real abuse. I left him that week. Your foundation helped me get back on my feet." These moments made everything worth it. Every difficult day in court. Every painful memory I'd had to relive. Every time I'd wanted to give up. Preston had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd given me purpose. 2 years after the trial, I received a letter from him. It had been forwarded through Eleanor, who called to warn me about it. "You don't have to read it," she said. "I can destroy it if you want." "No, I'll read it." The letter was short. "Naomi, I'm writing to apologize. Not because I expect forgiveness or because I think it will change anything. I'm writing because you deserve to hear it. What I did to you was wrong. Cruel. Criminal. I targeted you, manipulated you, and tried to destroy you when you were no longer useful to me. I did the same to other women before you. I told myself I had good reasons, that I was just trying to succeed, but the truth is I was a predator who saw people as resources to be exploited. Prison has given me time to think about who I became and why. I was so obsessed with appearing successful that I lost any sense of actual human decency. I hurt people who trusted me. I destroyed lives for money I didn't even need. I know you've built something amazing from what I tried to take from you. I've heard about the foundation, the housing projects, the women you've helped. You turned pain into purpose. I turned ambition into cruelty. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you were right to fight back. Right to seek justice. Right to refuse to let me define you. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Preston. I read it twice, then filed it away. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his acknowledgement. I'd already moved on. That evening, Daniel and I had dinner at my favorite restaurant. We'd been together for 18 months now, taking things slow but steady. "I have something to tell you," I said over dessert. "Should I be worried?" "No. I'm just happy. Really, truly happy. And I wanted to thank you for being patient with me. For understanding that I needed time to trust again." "You're worth the wait," Daniel said simply. "I never thought I'd feel this way again. After Preston, I thought I was broken. That I'd never be able to trust anyone or believe in anything good. You were never broken. You were hurt. There's a difference." I looked at this man who'd slowly, steadily proven himself trustworthy. Who celebrated my successes without feeling threatened. Who supported my work without trying to control it. Who saw me as a complete person, not a resource to be exploited. "I love you," I said. Daniel smiled. "I love you too. Have for a while now, actually." "Why didn't you say anything?" "I was waiting for you to be ready to hear it." That night, lying in bed, I thought about the past 3 years. About the girl who'd been thrown out on the lawn. About the woman who'd fought back. About the person I'd become. Preston had tried to define me as too local, too simple, too basic. Instead, I'd become powerful, purposeful, and proud. The best revenge wasn't destroying him. It was building a life he could never touch. Creating impact he could never diminish. Becoming a person he could never understand. The best revenge was being happy. And I was. 3 years after Preston's sentencing, I stood in front of the Brightwell Foundation's newest project. A 20-unit apartment complex specifically designed for women transitioning from financially abusive situations. The building was beautiful. 3 stories of red brick with large windows and small balconies. Inside, each unit was fully furnished and stocked with essentials. Women could move in with nothing and have everything they needed to start over. "This is incredible," Ray said, standing next to me. She'd left her graphic design job to become the foundation's director of communications, helping tell our stories and reach more women. "It's what my mother would have wanted," I said. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew a large crowd. Local politicians, community leaders, survivors we'd helped, and media outlets covering our work. My father gave a short speech about my mother's legacy. Rachel spoke about her experience as both a survivor and now the foundation's director of victim services. Then it was my turn. 3 years ago I lost everything. Or so I thought. I lost my marriage, my home, my sense of security. I felt like I'd lost myself. I looked out at the crowd. But what I actually lost was an illusion. The illusion that I needed someone else to define my worth. The illusion that I was powerless. The illusion that abuse was just something to survive and move on from. Instead, I discovered I came from strength. From women and men who built empires and changed communities. I discovered I had resources, not just money but knowledge, determination, and the support of people who believed in me. And I discovered I had a choice, to let what happened define me, or to use it as fuel to build something meaningful. This building represents that choice. Every woman who walks through these doors will have the same choice. To survive and move on or to rebuild and thrive. We're here to support them either way. After the ceremony we gave tours. The first residents would move in next week, 12 women and their children, all escaping situations like mine. One of them, a woman named Patricia, approached me. "I just wanted to say thank you. My husband controlled everything for 8 years. When I finally left, I had $200 and 3 kids. Your foundation gave us emergency housing, helped me file for divorce, got me enrolled in job training. Next month, I start a new job as a medical billing specialist. In 6 months, I'll have enough saved to get my own apartment. You gave us a future." "You gave yourself a future," I corrected. "You had the courage to leave. You did the hard work of rebuilding. We just provided resources. Resources matter. Hope matters. Someone believing in us matters. You gave us all 3. After she left, I found Daniel waiting by the car. "Good speech," he said, kissing me hello. "Thanks. How was your meeting?" "Productive. The city approved our design for the community center. We break ground in the spring." Daniel's architecture firm had become the foundation's partner in designing all our housing projects. He understood what these buildings needed to be, not just functional but healing. Spaces where women could rebuild their lives with dignity. We drove to my father's penthouse for our weekly dinner. But this time I had news. "I have something to tell you both," I said over appetizers. They looked at me expectantly. "Daniel and I are engaged." My father jumped up to hug me. "That's wonderful. When did this happen?" "Last night." He proposed at the construction site of our newest project. Very romantic in a nerdy architect way. Daniel laughed. "I designed a whole courtyard around the proposal spot. It's going to be beautiful when it's finished." "I'm so happy for you both," my father said, his eyes misty. "Your mother would have loved Daniel. She always said the best partners are the ones who make you better without trying to change who you are." "That's exactly what he does," I agreed. We spent dinner planning. We wanted a small wedding, maybe at one of the foundation properties. Something meaningful and intimate, not flashy. "I was thinking we could ask guests to donate to the foundation instead of giving gifts," Daniel said. "We don't need more stuff. But more women need help." "Perfect," I said. "That's exactly right." Later, in bed, I thought about how much had changed. 3 years ago, I'd been broken and scared, living in a cheap motel with nothing. Now I had everything that mattered. Work that fulfilled me. Family that supported me. A partner who valued me. A purpose that drove me. Preston was still in prison, serving his sentence. I'd heard through Eleanor that he'd become a model prisoner, taking classes and supposedly turning his life around. I didn't care. He was irrelevant to my life now. The next morning, I had a meeting with the board of Chin Reynolds Development. We were voting on a major initiative I'd proposed, converting 10% of all our new developments to affordable housing. "It's going to cost us money in the short term," I acknowledged. "But it's the right thing to do. And long term, it builds stronger communities which benefits everyone." The board voted unanimously in favor. My father smiled across the table. After the meeting he pulled me aside. "I'm retiring next year," he said. "I want you to take over as CEO." "Dad, I'm not ready." "Yes, you are. You've been running the community development division better than anyone I could have hired. You understand the business, you have the vision, and you care about doing it right. That's exactly what this company needs. What about you? I'll stay on the board, offer advice when asked. But it's time for the next generation to lead. Your mother always said this company would be yours someday. I think she'd be proud of what you've become. I thought about it. About the scared girl who'd married Preston to prove she could make it on her own. About the woman who'd fought back when he tried to destroy her. About the person I was now, strong, capable, purposeful. Okay, I said. Let's do it. 6 months later, Daniel and I got married in the courtyard of the first Brightwell Foundation housing complex. 50 guests, simple ceremony, heartfelt vows. You taught me what real partnership looks like, I told Daniel. Not someone trying to control or change me, but someone who celebrates who I am while encouraging me to grow. You make me better while loving me exactly as I am. You taught me what strength looks like, Daniel said. Not the absence of fear or pain, but the courage to keep building even when things fall apart. You're the strongest person I know, and I'm honored to build a life with you. Ray was my maid of honor. Rachel, Jennifer, and Simone were bridesmaids. My father walked me down the makeshift aisle, tears streaming down his face. At the reception, housed in the community room we decorated with simple flowers and string lights, my father gave a toast. To my daughter, who took the worst thing that ever happened to her and turned it into the best thing that happened to hundreds of other women. To Naomi and Daniel, who proved that real love is about building together, not tearing each other down. And to Helena, who I know is watching and smiling because her daughter became everything she hoped for. We danced and celebrated and toasted to new beginnings. Preston's name never came up once. He didn't deserve space in this moment. 1 year later, I officially became CEO of Chin Reynolds Development. My first act was to establish a new division focused entirely on sustainable, affordable housing development. The Brightwell Foundation had helped over 800 women by then, with plans to open locations in 10 more cities. We'd become a national model for supporting survivors of financial abuse. I testified before Congress about the need for stronger laws protecting victims of financial abuse. I'd written a book about my experience that became required reading in law schools teaching about domestic violence. But more than any of that, I'd built a life I was proud of. 5 years after Preston threw me out on that lawn, Daniel and I welcomed our first child, a daughter we named Helena after my mother. Holding her in the hospital, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The pain, the fear, the fight, the rebuilding. She's going to grow up knowing she can be anything, I told Daniel. That she doesn't need anyone's permission to be powerful. That her worth isn't determined by anyone except herself. She'll learn that from watching you, Daniel said. My father came to visit, bringing flowers and tears of joy. Your mother would have loved her, he said, holding his granddaughter carefully. And she would have been so proud of you. You took the family legacy and made it bigger, better, more meaningful. You didn't just inherit an empire, you expanded it in ways that actually matter. I had good teachers, I said. That night, I wrote a letter to my daughter to be given to her when she was older. Dear Helena, by the time you read this, you'll know some of the story. About Preston, about the trial, about how I rebuilt my life. But I want you to understand what really matters. You come from a long line of strong women. Your grandmother Helena built an empire from her inheritance. I took that empire and tried to make it serve something bigger than profit. Someday you'll decide what to do with that legacy. But more than that, I want you to know that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up. About refusing to let anyone else define your worth. About turning pain into purpose. Someone tried to destroy me once. He failed. Not because I was invulnerable, but because I refused to stay destroyed. I fought back, I built something better, and I became someone he could never touch. That's what I want for you. Not a life without hardship. That's impossible. But the knowledge that you can survive anything and come out stronger. You are named after a woman who built empires. You are the daughter of two people who believe in building things that matter. You are the granddaughter of a man who never gave up on his dreams. Whatever you choose to do with your life, do it with purpose. Build things that last. Help people who need it. And never, ever let anyone make you feel small. Love your mother. I sealed the letter and put it away for safekeeping. Preston had tried to define me as too local, too simple, too basic for his successful life. Instead, I'd become powerful, purposeful, and proud. I'd built a business empire, a foundation that helped thousands of women, and a family filled with love. The best revenge wasn't destroying him. The best revenge was this. A life so full of meaning and joy that he became nothing more than a footnote. A cautionary tale. A mistake I learned from and moved past. The best revenge was being happy. And I was